Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the year of being 70. If you're looking, you're seeing this picture of the two of us in Amsterdam. We were about 13, 14, I think. And the two of us now, we're both 70 with exactly a month apart. And so my childhood friend Lucy called me and said, why don't we do a podcast about how it is to be 70, how it was for us to grow up and, well, everything else that comes up for us to talk about, actually. How are you doing, Lucy?
I am great. Yes, I've had a good week, I think. And how are you now? You are somewhere different this week, we can see. So where are you and what are you up to?
Yeah. We're on this, I'm here with a friend on this little island at the north of the Netherlands. And we've been on a writing retreat. This is our last day. We're both eldest daughters. We're both very diligent in the morning. We each have our own kind of breakfast as she goes out for a walk often. And we sit behind our computer, but more or less in silence, each writing our own book, which has to do, for me, about our relationship to money that we spoke about earlier, and for her, more about the system of money as it is and how detrimental it is and
That's
how it could be changed.
that's
So,
fascinating. So you're not working on the same book together anymore. You're writing two separate books.
yes, yes, yes. The request was whether we could write a book together, but actually, this feels like much better. I've
Great.
also gone back to writing in Dutch.
And is that much easier for you? I mean, I imagine it must
Yeah,
be, however good your
it's
English is.
easier. My vocabulary is just, wider. I can play with language much more than I can in
Of
English.
course. So
Yes.
how's it gone this week? What have you written? How much have you got through and where have you gone to with it?
Yeah, so I had 9 chapters and two kind of intermezzos. And now I have finalized and kind of redone the first 3 chapters, firmed them up. And this morning I was in the intermezzo and it took me somewhere completely different from where I thought it would take me.
Wow, and where was
It
that? Can you
actually
say?
took me to my funeral.
Oh, really? Gosh, that's rushing ahead a bit, I hope.
I was rushing out of it. Well, I think about my funeral. Do you?
Yes. Yes, occasionally. Yeah, I do. It's
Well, this is because, I mean, I was writing about coins and how the invention of coins 2,500 years ago has completely changed the world. It's like the internet. All of a sudden, everybody could trade with everybody. And
yes.
the coin in the hand of a farmer was the same as the coin in the hand of a king. It had the same value. And that was revolutionary. And there was this very Croesus, this very rich king and wise man, Athens um, statesman Solon came to visit and said, well, I'm not so impressed with your wealth because only after you die it will be shown whether you've been really happy in the way people speak about you. And so then I thought, that's a really marvelous lesson, actually. Also, with money and with our energy and with our time and our attention, how how do we want people to remember us? What would they, what would we like them to say about us? So I wrote a bit of that, and that is actually quite a tender place, a very intimate and tender place. So that's where I got to, not at all planned, Lucy. Just maybe it is a tangent and it will be taken out, but it has taught me something in the right.
Yes, that sounds really interesting. How do
Yeah.
we how do we want people to remember us?
Yeah.
Well, I've had I mean, not the same experience, but something that's kind of in the same area this week, because I told you last week that I'd finished writing the book Magic Book, the book,
Yes.
and that will be my absolutely final and last book on how to write
A book.
writing a book about how to write books. I'm not going to do another one. I've done 7 of those now in
Well,
one way or another.
you've a full educational,
I have nothing more to say on the subject,
yes.
I don't think.
Now you can write.
But what I did do last weekend was I started writing the novel I've been meaning to write and wanting to write for the last, I don't know, 5 years, probably say.
Really?
And basically it's set in my childhood. So it took me back to my birth almost. I mean, I don't quite do that, and I'm kind of grappling with how to express. I mean, it's not about me; it's about two fictional twins who were born in the same year as us. So I'm kind of grabbing in experience from that time, real life experience. But I am grappling with how to write the thoughts and feelings of a baby who doesn't actually have language. So I need to somehow put in that that although these two little girls can't communicate with the grown-ups, they still have sophisticated feelings. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the premise I'm going with, so that they can express and develop as characters right from babyhood. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. But also it's kind of existential for me, in that I feel that being a fiction writer, writing novels, is, if there's a thing that you want to be remembered for, or you were put here to do, that is what I feel that I was put here to do. And it's what I would like to be remembered for. So I, it's sort of, I mean, I feel like, I've written 3 novels, which is not very many. I could have done more if life had gone in a different way. But I'm kind of, age 70, I feel I'm in the last chance saloon for being a novelist. So I need to get this right. I really want to write a good, readable, popular as well novel that will engage people. So that's
Wow. Well, congratulations on getting started.
yes, it's not a long start. I haven't written a great deal, but it feels so freeing to be writing fiction again, because I think last time I was writing fiction, I had to stop for financial reasons, various things. My husband got very ill. I had I'd given up working as a work-life balance consultant to write novels, because my first novel was published, and I thought, whoa, this is it. And then I spent a couple of years writing novels and not, of course, earning any money. And then my husband got ill and I had to go back to working, finding things to do. So I think I've put novel writing, fiction writing, in a box that I'm not allowed to do because it's dangerous, if you know what I mean. It's
No, tell me, say more. It's
well, I
dangerous.
mean, perhaps if I do it, things, well, I have to do things that will make money. I can't allow myself the luxury, as I did before, of thinking that this is going to be a kind of a lifestyle that I can afford. So I think I've kind of put it into that box and thought, I can't actually do this. I've got to just do, I've got to run a company. I've got to get other people's books out there. I've got to work on
Yeah.
non-fiction books, because the way we publish them, they make money. And writing fiction is potentially dangerous in that sense. It left me before without an income. And obviously, I'm not going to do that again. But I don't think I even realized that I was thinking in those terms. But now I kind of feel I've opened the Pandora's box. It's suddenly all these thoughts have flown out. And I'm happy. I kind of feel released to be able to do it.
That is really wonderful. That is really wonderful. I
and
was
and I
loving
love doing
your
it as
research.
well. I mean, I love writing fiction. It's just,
Yeah.
getting into characters' heads and talking for them. It's just such fun.
Wonderful. So there's courage there of doing what you think is dangerous, but it also feels like a life pulse that can no longer be ignored.
Yeah, yeah. I do actually feel, I don't know if you feel this. I do feel I've been, it's now what 3 weeks or something since my birthday. And I do genuinely feel kind of released by being 70. That, I don't know if you feel the same in any way, whether it's kind of feeling like that to you, but it's like, okay, I can actually be me now. I don't know why. Why would being 70 do that to you?
Wow, Lucy.
What am I saying? I'm also
Well, I can
finding,
actually be me now. That's a big thing to say. That's actually a big thing to feel.
yeah, yes, I guess. I don't know. Perhaps it's perhaps it's another. I mean, do you feel like that at all, or not particularly? Is it just,
Well,
another
I was
birthday, another?
thinking, we started with like the first decade of our life and our lives, and then I was thinking about the second decade of our lives, and which was actually a very happening time, 64 to 74. Um, but I became depressed when I was 15. And my parents didn't really know the word. I had at school we had music lessons, and there was this composer Schumann who was kind of heavy-hearted and discouraged and sad. And so when I was sad and came home from school crying, then in our house it was called "Oh, Lisette is Schumann again." That's how we called it because
Gosh.
and um And you speak about, suppressing and feeling you can be me. And in retrospect, I see I was suppressing part of myself. And um and I became very good at kind of being partially me and then being really me in kind of a secret life. But I've been depressed for many years. So for me, it was like around age 45 that I felt I can really be me. And since
That's
then, I've
interesting.
inhabited, and I think those years 64 to 74, when there was, on the one hand, like the economy still growing after the war, but on the other hand, there was the counterculture. And there was the pop music, but it was also the hippies and the anti-Vietnam movement and the feminism that, said we want equal rights and equal pay and equal positions. Um, and so I feel those two elements, like I can function in the world of business and of people doing business and of people, but I'm also a hippie at heart.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally, I think, 64 to 74 was one of the most significant decades of recent history, I think. And we went from being 10 and essentially little girls through adolescence and teenagehood to being women age 20. I got married at 20. So, that I went from being a 10-year-old girl to a married woman in that decade. But people say as well, the 60s started in 1964 or, sort of
Yeah,
into the 60s.
yeah,
And we watched it, we saw it, we participated in it and felt it happening around us.
yeah.
And so what happened to you in the why? I'm interested to know why you think you became depressed around age 15, but how did your life progress from, sort of say 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, I'm interested to know why you got married at 20. But I feel I was still a girl at 20. I was, I had like a protected childhood, I think. And a lot of the time in that decade was about popular people and how to be with the popular group and and falling in love and endless conversations with girlfriends about, boys we could never reach or who who we did. And then I had such a lovely conversation with, a man in my class, in my high school class, who was my boyfriend. And I would kind of sit and look at him adoringly, which drove him absolutely mad. And I said to him, this was on the 70th birthday of one of our classmates. And I said to him, I had no clue what to do when you had a boyfriend. And he said, well, I had no clue what to do either.
Oh, how sweet.
So I feel there was a lot of trying to find out who I was, why I was, how I was, how to fit in, how to be myself, how to not be myself, how to meet expectations. And yeah, and this pull towards, say, at some point I knew an older boy. He was still a boy, but he was a student in Amsterdam, and he used to go to Amsterdam, and it was so exciting there. And we had the Provo movement, which was very playful in kind of challenging the existing order, and my whole heart went out to that. But uh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
some of that, somewhere in that jumble mumble, of trying to emerge as a person.
Yes. But I mean, I think that, that whole period of kind of, well, of teenagehood basically is such a period of discovery, but we went through it in a time when the world was discovering itself as well. I mean, it was a
Yeah,
sort of, it was a teenager's world. I mean, that word
yeah.
teenager, I don't know if you have similar in Dutch, but that was a new word. It described us for the first time. I don't think, the previous generation hadn't been called that. And we were doing different things, we were wearing different things. I mean, there was a definite split between what my mother was wearing and what I was wearing. We didn't shop in the same places. She would buy expensive clothes from, I don't know where she bought them from, really, department stores and
Parents.
yes, couture kind of places.
Yeah.
And I would be buying the cool and trendy stuff on the King's Road. I mean, by this time, the King's Road in Chelsea, where I lived, had become totally boutiques, and they changed
The
regularly.
Mecca.
And there were, yes, and it was just, it was, I mean, I loved it. That was fantastic. And yet at the same time, I felt very insecure about what I looked like, and how other people saw me. I mean, I remember experimenting with makeup and thinking that Twiggy was absolutely wonderful. Um, but
Twiggy
also,
was this model who was so
yes,
thin, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah, probably as we would now think anorectic, but then that was all the thing. Yeah.
Yes, but she kind of she created that whole kind of wafy kind of
Yeah.
look, and the makeup with the sort of big
Big eyes.
eyes, and
Yeah.
and yes, but I suppose I from 10 I had 2 more years at day school, but unlike you, I always went to only girls' schools. So I was never at school with boys, so boys were always a bit I didn't sort of know any socially really, or not well. And then I went to boarding school aged 12 for 3 years, and that was transformational in the sense that I sort of that was where I became a teenager, but that was where I'd gone from being an innocent little girl playing games and um with friends, to suddenly learning about sex and boys and words that I'd never heard before. I didn't know what a lesbian was. I didn't know what queer meant. The word gay hadn't been invented at that stage, at least not for what it what it means now. Everything was, and my tactic was to be quiet and listen and learn and not say anything and make a fool of myself until I'd actually worked out what was going on. And then, there were sort of teenage parties because the boarding school I was at, we were all in the same sort of social set. So people used to give,
And was it still girls only?
it was all girls, yes. And we were in this very grand but rather decrepit country house called Wardour Castle in the middle of nowhere in Dorset. So, I mean, it was so cold. I got chilblains in June in my first term. It was
Wow.
it was quite
Wow.
an unconventional school, and the headmistress was very into the arts, sort of drama, singing, all that sort of thing, which was great. I mean, that was fine for me, but it was it was odd, I suppose. And then I did my O levels, which you did when you were 15, or so you do when you're 15 or 16 in this country, your sort of first proper, final school exams. And then I had got very fed up with being in the country and away from everything, and I sort of demanded to come back to London, and live at home and do my A levels at a day school. And my parents, I mean, I don't think I had anything to do with the choices, but my parents enrolled me in a school called Godolphin and Latimer, which was actually, and I think I said this before, it was a state school. They didn't even realize it was a state school, but it was an extremely good grammar school. And at that point, for the first time ever, I met people who had not gone to
Yeah.
private school. And it was a girls' school again. But what was amazing about that period was that education, tertiary education, university education was free for the first time. And I met girls there who were absolutely desperate to go to university, to become the first in their family to become a teacher, or, they didn't have massively high kind of expectations or goals. They just wanted a proper professional job. They wanted the education, they wanted the knowledge, and to be recognized as intelligent human beings, I think. And again, I kind of sat there for 2 years and listened to people. And it just totally transformed my view of the world that I lived in, the kind of world of the upper middle class, where I took everything for granted, my education. I thought I was going to Oxford, everything around me
And
was
you were
just,
meant to go to Oxford.
I
That was
was
the whole
meant to.
idea, right?
I
There
know.
was the path. There was a
Yes.
path there.
Exactly. And I did the exams for Oxford, because you have to do you had well, I think you probably still do. You have to do external exams for Oxford and Cambridge, and I didn't get in. So I went to Liverpool, and that was life-changing as well. Because that was in the north of England. I went to Liverpool really because I had a boyfriend there, and I used to go up and stay with him, and so I knew people there, and also I wanted to do
Stay with
psychology.
him.
Stay with him. Oh yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes, I went on the pill when I was 17, which is another huge kind of change in,
An enormous,
in
enormous
all our lives.
difference.
Oh God, my mother's going to be listening to this. Sorry, Mum. It was Dr. Newton. He put me on the pill.
Well, maybe you asked for it.
I did ask for it. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
definitely.
Yeah.
Oh no,
It's
you
not
just
just
weren't
the
doing.
good doctor who did
It
it.
wasn't a social experiment. But
Yeah.
but yes, I mean that was a whole, and then I met a whole lot of other completely different people. People again who came from predominantly working class or lower middle class, I suppose, backgrounds. There was nobody like me at Liverpool. There was nobody who had a posh background, who had, I mean, I would never say, I would never have told anybody that my brothers were at Eton. That would have been
Mm.
so embarrassing. I imagine I sounded pretty different to other people, but then when I went to Liverpool, I met the man I married, and did a kind of inconvenient boyfriend swap.
Oh,
um,
wow.
and
You were so far ahead of me, really.
Well, but it was,
Then you
yeah, I
married.
mean, it was, I kind of feel, and also the other thing I did at Liverpool was start to act. I joined the drama, the Dramsoc, and started acting. And the other thing that was in that period, theatre was a really powerful force for social change. And the plays then, there was Beckett, there was, there had been John Osborne, there were all sorts of plays going on. The Everyman Theatre in Liverpool was doing extraordinary things. And it's just so different now. I mean, nobody thinks of theatre in the same sort of,
Mm,
I mean, it
I
can
went to this
happen.
piece, Prima Facie,
Oh, yes. No, you've seen.
and it really speaks about how unjust it is that when a woman goes to court because she's been violated by a man, the man is not hurt, the perpetrator is not hurt, only the victim is hurt. And so I really felt, well, here is a piece again that speaks to a societal issue that is big, that is really, really big.
Yeah.
And it brought up lots and lots of memories of all the times that I've had to say no, that I've had to push a man away, or that I've had to be really, really firm and say, I do not want this, as we
No,
all. You look very intent on something else. Is something happening on your screen?
no, no.
Oh, okay.
No, I was just thinking. Yes, I mean, I really do want to see that play. I think I can watch it as a filmed play from the National Theatre. But yeah, but the other thing was that, there was the sexual revolution happening between, certainly was happening between 1964 and 1974, but there was none of and there was feminism, but there weren't the issues about women being abused, being taken advantage of. That wasn't happening then. Nobody was
Well, it
saying
was
anything about
happening,
that.
but it wasn't
Oh, of course it was
mentioned.
happening. No, no, exactly,
It
exactly.
was happening, but it wasn't
Oh, of
mentioned.
course it was happening.
No, it was
Absolutely.
all still undercover, under
Yeah.
the covers, and not in our conscious awareness. I mean, of
No.
course, it happened all the time. But let me pick up on, one thing you said about your school days is that you were quiet and you listened. And so one question is, how did the other girls know all these things that you didn't know? That's one question. But another, and you didn't know, another is I was also quite shy and quiet. And then when I was 16, I think, I have glasses from when I was 10. And at age 10, I was always this goody two shirts, just really doing my homework and then getting wrong marks because they would point things on the blackboard. And it turned
Oh,
out I couldn't see, I couldn't read it, I couldn't
oh, that's
see it.
terrible.
In geography, they pointed to Amsterdam and I thought it was Rotterdam or whatever. So then it was found out that I needed glasses. And I felt very, there was one model I could choose from, one with like a gray part here, the other one with a red part here. And I thought the gray part is better because then it won't be so conspicuous. But I felt very kind of um faulty.
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
have braces for my teeth and glasses, and I was, yeah, shy and kind of withdrawn, I feel. And also when I was in high school, and then at age 16, a few things happened. I lenses, contacts were coming, who that were hard contacts. It was like
Yeah.
the bottom of a wine bottle that you put
Wow.
in your eyes, and it hurt. And I looked like this all the time, so it didn't hurt so much. But I could take my glasses off, and there was a girl came into our class from Rotterdam, and she had such a free way of dealing with people, of getting to know, the whole school, befriending teachers. And I kind of looked at her and started to experiment, doing like her. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful to her for
Yes. Yes.
that
Absolutely.
example of not feeling so restrained. And also at school, there were like two groups. There was like the mainstream group that played field hockey and tennis and, was very much of the code of the place I grew up in. And then there
Yeah.
was an alternative group that I really loved being a part of, loved being a part of. I felt, oh, yeah, this is me. But of course, that wasn't what was at home for me. So there was always a bit this split of the
Yeah.
conventional and the unconventional that I've had
Yes.
to resolve.
I think that's probably true of me as well, but in a different kind of way. I mean, I think I mean, I discovered boys when I was, I suppose, about 14. I mean, but just it was sort of like it was a different kind of attention. I mean, I don't want to sound awful, but I didn't wear glasses and I didn't have braces on my teeth, and
No, no, you
I
look lovely.
experimented with makeup, and I realized that I could, even though I didn't feel that I was sort of particularly pretty or outstanding without makeup, I realized that I could use it. And to kind of create the face that I wanted to have, and it worked. And I I got lots of attention from boys, and that was like kind of like a revelation to me. So I ended up having lots of boy friends. They were not boyfriends, they were not kind of mostly lovers. And I didn't have a proper boyfriend till I was sort of 16, 17. But it was that kind of changed me and brought me out of myself in certain contexts, although I was also basically very shy. But if people were being kind of appreciative of me, then I could I was able to shine.
Blossom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Which was a strange thing. But then I sort of going back to Liverpool, then I met Rob, my husband. Well, he wasn't my husband then, but he became my boyfriend. And then uh, he asked me to marry him, and I just thought, and it wasn't like I was falling into a kind of conservative, this is what I should be doing, getting married type of thing at all. It felt quite rebellious because he lived in such a different world to me. And then I had to negotiate. I was very naive about it, but I had to negotiate the two very different worlds and classes that he and I lived in. I think he might have been quite attracted by my family in a sort of way, although he also found them kind of, found them very difficult at the same time. But I absolutely loved his family. They lived in
Mm.
Blackpool. The house had been a bed and breakfast once. And I went back for that first sort of summer vacation to Blackpool with him. And I worked as a conductor on the Blackpool trams, which was like, I mean, my brothers just literally did not believe that I was doing this. I mean, I was wearing kind of a Clippy's uniform. I was an absolutely terrible conductor. I could never remember the fares.
Well, maybe you were acting. You were acting to be
I
a
didn't
conductor.
act it very well. I was a very bad actor in that particular scenario.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, so then a year or so later we did get married, um and then we went off to Australia, not till 1976, but we got married in 1974, so that was the end of my second decade. And then
Wow.
no,
I don't think, at that time we were not in contact.
no,
Not
no,
so much. I mean, I was by then absorbed in student life, which completely absorbed me, which was also, I mean, when I look back at it later, it was my time of proving that I could function in the world of my parents and of my siblings. And I had a great time, but I was also depressed. And so I was also suppressing essential parts of me.
did you
And
know
but
you were depressed? Because you're right that nobody, I mean, the words for mental health,
no,
and
my parents had no idea.
no,
I
no,
mean, I never read Freud or anything, but we were just born, or we picked it up from the ethers or from conversations or books we read, some insight in human psyche. But my parents did not really have that. It was not part of their education or interest, really.
no.
And so I don't know when I think I saw a student psychologist, but it was only later. It was only in the 80s. And my mother actually was, very instrumental in finding a therapist for me that I could talk to. And then, that whole thing started. But that was not in the 70s. In the 70s, it was, no, but I was very much a student in a very, one of those conservative student clubs, which was kind of all encompassing. The only thing we spoke about was like other people, and we were organizing parties and all doing all the things that students can be fully occupied with. And I was very much part of that. I was also then by then on the pill, which was a bit of a shock to my mother, who thought that everything would be very much above board and people would wait until they got married.
Yeah.
So at some point I found that so we lived in student houses, and I lived in a kind of smallish one, 10 women. 10 girls, 10 women. And so they had to cover for me when my mother called early in the morning. And at some point I thought, well, this, I have to tell them. And my mother was absolutely devastating,
Oh gosh.
not devastated, devastated that her daughter would do something like that. Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think I said before as well. I don't think my parents were entirely thrilled when they realised I'd actually moved in with Rob. That was and I mean, he definitely wanted to get married. I was kind of like, oh, okay, let's get married, kind of thing. I wasn't it was neither here nor there to me. And I think really in my memory anyway, but I think they did want us to get married because we were living together.
And did
Um,
you have like a white dress and a church wedding and your
yeah,
father you away and all of that?
yes, yes, all of that. I got married in the Queen's Chapel because my father was a member of the royal household, which was in fact where my parents got married as well. And I had a white dress, but it was pre-Princess Diana, so it wasn't a big meringue dress. It was just a sort of fairly simple. And then we had a wedding reception at Vintners Hall, which is where the Vintners are a London city company, where my father was the I don't know what he was, I can't remember now, the president or something of the Vintners that year. And it was a sort of a drinks party, after sort of evening drinks party. And then strangely, Rob's father was also in the city, and he was the commissioner of the City of London Police. Even though his mum was in Blackpool and had sort of stayed where she, had literally had grown up in the same house. His
Oh.
father came from a different well, he had come from London and he was a policeman and rose through the ranks of the police. So there was a kind of coming together of my parents and and his father in the sort of
Mm.
city of London, which I think probably possibly made it a bit easier for them to
Mm.
um I don't know, accept the differences between us in terms of social class. It was very weird looking back, that whole kind of mixture of things, but class was a huge thing. But I also, I mean, this is a kind of leap. I remember sitting on a train when I was about 17, going to Oxford to stay with a friend, and somebody had given me a copy of Germaine Greer's The Female Eunuch. And I remember that moment. I can't remember which bit of the book I was reading or what particularly, but it's sort of like there was a kind of like a real moment of revelation where I went, yes, I'm a woman, women are different. I can't say I understood feminism or, but I know that was a kind of seminal moment in my life, even though I did nothing about it particularly for many years after that. But I do remember that as part of that decade that,
Well, it's also really interesting how I have always assumed that men and women were, you know, equal.
yeah,
And when I looked at my parents' marriage, I mean, they had like a partnership in which they were equal, but my father was, of course, the breadwinner and the career maker. My mother was the homemaker. And I kind of always thought there's something wrong with that model.
yes,
One stays at home and the other goes, wait, there's something wrong with that model for me. And so I have never really been engaged with feminism, but I think through the times that we grew up in, there was an awareness, and Germaine Greer, of course, and put it in writing brilliantly, and others, of, we can do things and we are going to do them.
yeah. No, I do think that was whether we were aware of it or not, or I think that has informed our lives. I mean,
Yeah.
we are the generation for whom, I mean, even though all the talk of feminism at the time, especially in, I don't know, in the UK certainly, was things like, sort of, oh, women are burning their bras and,
And they were. I watched it on television and I was like, wow.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But it was sort of, yes, it was certainly the public start of it, even though,
Yeah.
Betty Friedan had been writing about it in the 50s. It hadn't sort of filtered through very much to public consciousness, I don't. And I think we were the product of that. And as I said, the sort of free education that was available now to women and not just to men in my cohort of
Yeah.
students was extraordinary. And it was the same in at university in Liverpool, where there were the students there were all people who would never have been able to go to university if they'd had to pay for it, and it was a totally liberating thing. And I totally think that, university education should be free now. And yet I can equally see there's absolutely no way of paying for it. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, I think we were lucky, that generation of
But it's
baby.
interesting to see that you went into, a completely different environment, and I chose to kind of go into the posh environment.
I
And
can't see you there at all. I know, you're right. We
I
weren't
can do it.
attached then, but
I
it's
can
hard
do it. Yeah, but yeah, no, I did, and I still have some friends, from
Yeah,
that time, really good and great people who also went on to do great things. And also it's not the people. The people are good. It's just, some rules and ways of thinking that are not
yeah,
essentially mine.
yeah, yeah.
But I was proving a point, and I did prove it, but it came at a cost.
Yeah, yes, yes, I suppose in a way it came at a cost to me as well, in that in the kind of decade after that, which I'm sure we'll talk about some other time, I was mainly in Australia. And so, and I think I've said before as well that when I came back, I couldn't go back to where I'd come from. So I feel like in a way, I've lost my tribe that I grew up in. I don't, apart from my actual family, I don't fit into that tribe anymore. I'm not comfortable there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
And I think because of choosing to go back in there or kind of continuing that, um, I can feel comfortable there, but not for too long. I can
no,
do it for a
no,
few hours.
yeah, yes, yes,
Otherwise,
yeah.
when I'm in there too long, when I come home, it takes me days, weeks to come back into who I feel I truly am.
And is that because you feel that you're sucked back into it, or because you sort of feel the sort of sense of kind of cognitive dissonance for
Yeah, I
after
think
you've
it is
been in
kind of a
there?
cognitive dissonance, and also, that same suppression of and being part of conversations that have a nuance that doesn't really agree with me.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah, I
have
know exactly what you
myself
mean.
also, really removed myself from some things that supposedly when you study in Leiden and you're part of that student club, that's, friends for life, you stay in
Right.
this year group for life. And at age 50, I thought I've tried long enough. It was enjoyable and good, and I met really great people when we were students, but after that I chose also to go to Amsterdam and kind of not fully continue in that line. And it's always a bit of a mystery. I was talking with a friend the other day that in such an environment, yeah, no, let me just say, yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but I do know I need to limit myself to exposure. It's like being in
Yeah.
the sun too long. You shouldn't.
Yeah, no, that's such
For
an
the skin.
interesting way
This
of
is
putting
bad
it.
for the soul.
Yes, no, I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, it tends to make me bolshy. I start wanting to argue with people and kind of pick political
Yeah.
fights and things, which
Yeah.
is completely
No,
pointless and inappropriate. So, but that's
I
how I
recognize
start
that.
to feel when I'm in a world where people feel to me to kind of live in a bubble of entitlement. And I find that just
I recognize that, and that is not the person I want to be.
no, no, exactly. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So next week, Lisette, we're going to talk to Cyril Campbell. We're going to talk about fashion, and is this us?
Yeah.
And how we should be or can be looking at the age of 70. No, Cyril was actually, she's exactly the same age as us because she was at school with me in London, sort of growing up around the King's Road. And she became kind of fashion consultant to the stars. I believe, she has some very starry kind of clients like,
Well, we'll be her stars next week.
yes, exactly. So I'm really looking forward to having a three-way conversation with Cyril and talking about. I mean, I think you and I have very different, well, reasonably different sort of fashion, if you
Style.
can call it fashion.
Yes, and we have very different bodies
Yeah, well,
as
yes,
well.
yes,
I'm
exactly.
kind of tall, much taller than you are, tower over
Yes, and
people.
much
So
thinner than
that's
I am as well.
well. and not at all as thin as in my head I am, you know.
Well,
Areas to camouflage. Yeah.
well,
Yeah. No, but very different styles as well. So yeah,
yes,
I'm curious what she will say and
yes, me too.
what she will recommend and whether we will follow her recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be fun. So,
Okay.
well, that's it for this
See you
week.
next
So
week.
lovely to talk to you, and we will be talking again with Cyril next week.
Good.
So, okay, bye for now.
Bye.